The reality of Canada's labor market is not what it seems. It's not a story of nobody wanting to work, nor is it a story of a booming economy. In fact, Canada's labor market is suffering from something else, and that thing is oversupply.
The Great White North, once a beacon of prosperity and promise, now finds itself grappling with a crisis that could fundamentally alter Canadian society. From coast to coast, the cries of the unemployed echo through the streets, their desperate pleas drowned out by the relentless march of a new wave of arrivals, each one vying for a slice of a shrinking economic pie. The numbers are staggering, a tidal wave of immigrants that has come to reshape the socio-economic disposition of the nation. In 2021, more than 8.3 million people, or almost one quarter at 23.0% of the population, were or had ever been a landed immigrant or permanent resident in Canada. This was the largest proportion since Confederation, topping the previous 1921 record of 22.3% and the highest among the G7. Given that the population of Canada continues to age and fertility is below the population replacement level, today immigration is the driver of population growth. If these trends continue, based on Statistics Canada's recent population projections, immigrants could represent from 29.1% to 34.0% of the population of Canada by 2041. But as the jobs grow scarce and the competition intensifies, a dark undercurrent of resentment and fear has begun to take hold. The Association for Canadian Studies and the Metropolis Institute survey found that 50% of Canadians agree that too many immigrants are coming into Canada, a number that has more than doubled since January 2023, but has remained consistent across polls conducted in the past 6 months. Welcoming more than 500,000 immigrants a year by 2025 has also raised concerns about whether Canadians can keep up. There's also the question about whether immigration is the economic driver it's been touted to be and its potential for diminishing returns. The recent surge of immigrants occupying a significant portion of Canadian jobs is creating widespread unease across the country. So far, this influx has intensified competition in the job market, leaving many Canadians concerned about their employment prospects and economic stability. As a result, the societal tension surrounding this issue continues to grow. In this video, we will delve into the multiple ways this influx of immigrants is making the job market difficult and more onerous by the day for the average Canadian and the various intricacies involved. From increased competition for available jobs to downward pressure on wages, we will examine how these dynamics are reshaping the employment landscape. This is a story that has been building for years, an insidious crisis that has crept up on Canada like a rising tide. According to data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or the IRCC, the country welcomed over 405,000 new permanent residents in 2021, the highest number in its history. This was a significant increase from the 184,000 immigrants admitted in 2020, a year marked by pandemic-related travel restrictions and processing delays. But this surge in immigration is not a one-off event. In fact, it's part of a broader trend that has seen Canada's immigration rate soar to record heights in recent years. Between 2016 and 2021, Canada admitted over 1.3 million new permanent residents, an average of over 300,000 per year. This is a staggering increase from the previous 5-year period when the country's admittance ranged between 220,000 to 250,000 immigrants annually. The reasons for this dramatic increase are complex and multifaceted. On one level, it reflects a deliberate policy choice by the Canadian government to boost immigration as a means of driving economic growth and addressing the country's aging population and low birth rates. In 2017, the Liberal government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a new immigration target of 340,000 permanent residents per year by 2020, with a focus on attracting skilled workers, entrepreneurs, and innovators. But there are also broader global forces at play. As conflict, climate change, and economic instability have driven millions of people from their homes in search of a better life, Canada has become an increasingly attractive destination for immigrants worldwide. With its stable political system, high standard of living, and reputation for tolerance and multiculturalism, Canada has long been seen as a beacon of hope for those seeking to build a new life in a new land. For many Canadians, this influx of immigrants has been a source of pride and celebration, a testament to the country's openness and diversity. But for others, it has become a source of anxiety and fear, a feeling that the very foundations of their society and economy are being eroded by an unsustainable surge of newcomers. At the heart of this anxiety is the fear that immigrants are making it harder for native-born Canadians to find work and earn a decent living. This is a concern that has been echoed by politicians, pundits, and ordinary citizens alike, a sense that the country's labor market is being flooded by a wave of foreign workers who are driving down wages and displacing Canadian job seekers. There is some evidence to support this concern. According to a 2021 report by the Fraser Institute, a Canadian think tank, the earnings gap reflects lower employment rates and lower employment compensation for immigrants than their Canadian-born counterparts with similar levels of formal education and training. This wage gap was even more pronounced for immigrants with university degrees who earned 40% less than their Canadian-born counterparts. This wage suppression effect is not unique to Canada. In fact, it is a phenomenon that has been observed in many countries that have experienced large influxes of immigrants. The basic economic logic is simple. When there's an increase in the supply of labor, the price of labor, i.e. wages, tends to fall, all else being equal. This is particularly true of industries and occupations where immigrants are overrepresented, such as in low-skilled service jobs, construction, and agriculture. However, the impact of immigration on the Canadian labor market is not just about wages. It is also about the availability of jobs and the competition for those jobs. This is a concern that has been particularly acute for young Canadians, many of whom are struggling to find their footing in an increasingly precarious and competitive job market. According to a 2022 report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, the unemployment rate for young Canadians aged 15 to 24 was 14.1% in 2021, more than double the overall unemployment rate of 7.5%. This youth unemployment crisis has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has hit workers particularly hard in industries like hospitality, retail, and tourism. But even before the pandemic, young Canadians face significant employment barriers. In many cases, they found themselves competing not just with their peers, but also with older workers and immigrants for entry-level jobs and internships. This has led to a growing sense of frustration and disillusionment among many young people who feel they are being shut out of the labor market by forces beyond their control. This effect of immigrants on labor shortages may be illustrated by reference to the demand for and supply of physicians. Imagine this: at the present rate of about 250,000 new immigrants every year, in 10 years there will be 2.5 million new Canadians demanding medical care. Since the average Canadian physician takes care of 470 patients, this demand translates into the need for 5,329 additional physicians, which is added to the many needed to replace those who retire and to care for the increasing healthcare demands of an aging population. Meanwhile, the main advocates for more immigrants to fill job vacancies are Canadian employers. It is easy to understand their motivation. The immigrants keep wages down, which raises their profits and allows them to avoid the need to invest in the training of Canadian-born workers and labor-saving capital and technology. There are two things wrong with immigration policies developed to meet employers' goals. First, the benefits they derive exist only in the short run. In other words, they are super transient. As is the case with all government subsidies, competition from within and outside of Canada tends to wipe out all extra profits and can only delay adjustments required to accommodate changing global patterns of comparative advantage. Second, and most importantly, the implicit subsidies to employers occur at a significant cost to society as a whole. Because the subsidies prevent the substitution of capital and technology for labor, there are lower productivity increases, which throughout history have been the driving force behind the growth in Canadian living standards. One of the most controversial aspects of Canada's immigration system in recent years has been the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, or the TFWP. This program allows Canadian employers to hire foreign workers on a temporary basis to fill labor shortages in specific industries and regions. In theory, the TFWP is supposed to be a last resort for employers who have exhausted all other options for finding qualified Canadian workers. However, in practice, critics argue that the TFWP has become a way for employers to access cheap, compliant labor at the expense of Canadian workers. According to Statistics Canada, there were 110,000 temporary foreign workers, or TFWs, in Canada in the year 2000. By 2021, this number had ballooned to 777,000. Many of these workers are employed in low-wage, low-skilled jobs in industries like agriculture, food processing, and hospitality. In some cases, they are paid less than the prevailing wage for their occupation, and they often face significant barriers to asserting their rights and protections under Canadian labor law. For Canadian workers in these industries, the presence of temporary foreign workers can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, the influx of foreign workers can help to fill labor shortages and keep businesses running smoothly. But on the other hand, it can also create downward pressure on wages and working conditions, as employers have access to a pool of workers who are often willing to accept lower pay and poorer conditions than their Canadian counterparts. This dynamic has led to growing calls for reform of the TFWP, with some advocates arguing that the program should be scaled back or eliminated altogether. An example is the call for deportation following the ongoing protests by Indian immigrants on the reforms made to the provincial nomination program of provinces with more lenient immigration policies like Prince Edward Island. Other citizens have called for stronger protections for temporary foreign workers, including better enforcement of labor standards and more pathways to permanent residency for workers who have demonstrated their value to the Canadian economy. But the debate over temporary foreign workers is just one part of a larger conversation about the impact of immigration on the Canadian labor market. As the country continues to grapple with the economic and social fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are growing concerns that the surge in immigration could put even more pressure on an already strained system. One area of particular concern is the impact of immigration on public services and infrastructure. As the population grows, so too does the demand for schools, hospitals, roads, and other public goods. In many cases, these services are already stretched thin, with long wait times for medical procedures, overcrowded classrooms, and crumbling infrastructure. According to a Canadian Infrastructure Report Card report, 1 in 3 Canadian municipalities reported that their infrastructure was in poor or very poor condition, with an estimated $141 billion needed to bring these assets up to standard. This infrastructure deficit is particularly acute in large cities like Toronto and Vancouver, which have seen significant population growth in recent years, driven partly by immigration. For many Canadians, the strain on public services is a tangible reminder of the challenges posed by rapid population growth. It is a concern that cuts across party lines and demographic groups, a sense that the country is struggling to keep up with the demands of a growing and changing population. But the impact of immigration on public services is not just a matter of dollars and cents. It's also about Canadian society's societal and cultural fabric, and the challenges of integrating newcomers into a diverse and rapidly evolving national identity. Ultimately, the challenges posed by immigration to the Canadian labor market are complex and multifaceted, and there are no easy solutions. As the ranks of the unemployed swell, the fabric of society begins to fray, giving rise to the specters of social unrest, political upheaval, and the erosion of the values that have long defined the Canadian way of life. The issue no doubt threatens to irrevocably alter the face of the nation, replacing the Canada we once knew with a dystopian vision of the future, a land where the dreams of the many are sacrificed to the insatiable appetites of the few, where the promise of opportunity gives way to the tyranny of exploitation and the shattering of an ideal social accord. If you like this video, hit the like button and help us spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications on our latest news and analysis. In the meantime, check out one of these videos here to learn more. Thanks for watching.